Hey, it's Art from My New Microphone. Let's discuss my top 11 non-technical tips for improving your mixes. Now, here on the My New Microphone YouTube channel, I talk a lot about the technical aspects or techniques of mixing, but in this video, I wanted to focus on the non-technical aspects of mixing. Music production, after all, is an art form that combines the technical with the non-technical. We are combining the logical left side of the brain with the more creative right side of the brain to create music that really has an emotional impact as well as technical proficiency. It's a big reason why I got into music production personally, and it's likely a big reason why you guys have got into it as well. So let's dive right into my 11 non-technical tips for improving our mixes with tip number 1, which is to buy our plugins or to find free plugins and not to illegally download or crack or pirate our plugins. Now, I'm not here to shame anybody for stealing plugins. I'm sure many of us have pirated software in the past. However, I am here to say that you'll get much more out of your plugins if you just go ahead and buy them. Spending our hard-earned cash on our plugins will make them that much more valuable to us and will get us to focus in and really learn those plugins that much more. We all ultimately want to get our money's worth, and so buying our plugins will make us that much more intent on actually learning how to use them, and we will avoid overspending and getting too many plugins at once and just being overwhelmed with the sheer amount of plugins that often come in cracked bundles. Finally, from a psychological standpoint, if we are stealing plugins on one hand and trying to charge money for our services on the other hand, that cognitive dissonance may mess with us as music producers and mixers. So stay away from cracked plugins. And I would even recommend getting rid of all of your pirated plugins right now and starting from scratch, buying the necessary components to get your mixes and music production to the level that you need them to be. Tip number 2 I have for you is to develop a client-facing portfolio and to post it online, even if you aren't trying to mix professionally. Doing so will get you out of your comfort zone and really make you put your best foot forward to showcase your best work, your best mixes, and to actually open yourself up to critique from others. I think that the ability to really put yourself out there and open yourself up to criticism is paramount for growth, not only in life, but also in mixing. It's what I'm doing here on the YouTube channel, even though I'm rather uncomfortable talking to the camera just yet. But I know that in doing the thing and showcasing it to the world, I will eventually develop the technique and the skills to become better at it. The same goes with mixing. Now, if you really want to get your name out there and begin working professionally as a mixer, I would suggest sticking to 1, maybe 2 genres of music and become specialized, at least when you're starting out, because that will allow clients to come to you and know that, okay, this person is very specialized in this genre, they know what they're doing, and they can get me results for my music in that specific genre. It's fantastic to be able to mix proficiently in a wide variety of genres. However, again, if you're just starting out and you want to start getting paid, I would suggest starting with 1, maybe 2 genres at max, and put that in your portfolio and start reaching out to potential clients if possible. If you're interested, you can check out my portfolio. It has a variety of different genres. You can check that out at foxmixing.com. I'll leave a link to that in the description box down below. Non-technical tip number 3 is to participate in mixing competitions. This can get you out of your comfort zone and open up your world of mixing to particular styles and genres that you may not be comfortable with mixing. It's also great to compete with other mixing engineers to potentially get feedback and to hear what other people are doing with these same multi-tracks that you mixed. If you rank near the top, you may even win some really cool gear or even some cash for your work, but really the main point is getting those multi-tracks and being able to mix a professional sounding record. You may find that when you import these multi-tracks from these mix competitions into your mixing sessions, that they are much easier to mix than your own productions, which can really make you focus on whether or not you need to improve your production versus your mixes. You could potentially download these multi-tracks and have a breeze mixing it because the multi-tracks themselves sound so good, and so participating in these mixing competitions can open your eyes to that fact that the tracking is a big part of the mix. A few mix competition sites that I like are Rate My Mix, Nail the Mix, Pure Mix, and Turnamix. I will leave links to each of those websites in the description box down below for you to check out if you're interested. Tip number 4 is to write, record, and produce multiple songs before going ahead and mixing them. This will give us a full range of the entire music production process and how we can work up to our mixes. Diving into the entire creative process of music production can make us that much more well-equipped when it comes to mixing, as we will know what goes into creating those multi-tracks that we have to mix. If you are learning to mix out of necessity to mix your own work, then perhaps you've already done this quite often. But for those of us who are focused strictly on mixing, I would highly suggest writing, recording, and producing a few songs at least, and then going ahead and mixing them to really thresh out the entire music production process. Non-technical tip number 5 for improving our mixes is to develop a strong workflow. Doing so will save us a tremendous amount of time in meandering around a disorganized session and will allow us to focus our creative energy on the actual mixing itself rather than on the minutiae of the mix session. Developing a strong mixing workflow from start to finish allows us to reduce our decision fatigue throughout the mixing process while also helping us to get deeper into the flow of mixing to maximize our creativity. I have a free resource for you discussing my workflow. If you'd like to check that out, it will be the first link in the description box down below. It is my mixing guidebook that walks you through the step-by-steps of mixing. So check that out if you are interested after this video. Non-technical tip number 6 is to finish mixes regularly, even if we aren't 100% satisfied with our work. Spending weeks or even worse, months on a single mix doing small tweaks to try to get it to perfection is largely a waste of time, especially when we are just learning how to mix. When we go about and spend this much time in a single mix, we often actually make things worse by over-tweaking and over-processing, where the mix would have been as good as we could have gotten it with our current skill level. So getting in there and getting your reps done in as many different mixes as possible, rather than focusing on a single mix over an extended period of time, is a great way to improve your workflow, your speed, and your overall skills in mixing. So that's tip number 6. If you're finding these tips useful and thought-provoking thus far, I would encourage you to hit that like button as it helps spread this video to more people. I appreciate that. All right, tip number 7 is to listen to our favorite songs to get a good sense of familiarity with our typical playback systems. Take notes on the production elements and the overall mixing techniques that you can decipher from listening to these mixes in your studio headphones, in your earbuds, in your car, your home entertainment system, and the like. Getting nice and familiar with our playback systems will help tremendously when it comes time to referencing our own music on those playback systems outside the studio to ensure proper mix translatability. For instance, I know that in my current vehicle, the bass is a bit over-exaggerated and the upper mids are a little bit lacking. So I need to take this into consideration when I'm referencing my own mixes outside the studio, especially if I just wrap up a mix in the studio on my nice monitors and take it out into the car. I can expect that the car's system will over-exaggerate the bass and will be a bit lackluster in the upper mids. So spend some time listening to your favorite songs on your favorite playback systems. The love for music, after all, is what brings us all together here as music producers and mixing engineers. Tip number 8 is to take detailed notes throughout the mixing process, particularly when we are listening to the first pass of the mix or getting our initial balance done with faders and pan pots. It can be beneficial to jot down creative ideas or technical techniques that we'd like to use throughout the mixing process, and then coming back to those later when it's appropriate, once we are in the bulk of the mix. Listening to multi-tracks for the first time can really spark some great ideas, and it's important to capture those ideas on pen and paper or digitally so that we can reference them later to figure out if they are a good idea or bad idea and whether or not we should pursue those ideas in the mix. Once we have a proper to-do list of things to tackle within the mix, we can move forward that much more efficiently throughout the mixing process. Tip number 9 is to take regular breaks throughout the mixing process to refresh our ears and to reset our objectivity in the mix. Now, the reason this is important is because our hearing will naturally acclimatize to whatever it is we are listening to. So as we begin mixing, we can quickly lose our objectivity in the mix. This is why periodically referencing other tracks is so important to get us in the right ballpark and to make sure that we are staying on course. And it's also why taking frequent breaks is an important part of the mixing process. Furthermore, if we plan on mixing at relatively loud volumes for extended periods of time, it's important to take these frequent breaks for our hearing safety and to avoid ear fatigue. Tip number 10 is being open-minded as a mixing engineer. That's not only about taking guidance from those ahead of us, our peers, or even those who are earlier in their mixing journeys than us, but it's also taking the critiques and the criticisms and the mix revisions from clients very seriously, as well as not being afraid to go into different mixing techniques to explore different options available to us in the mix. For example, I teach music and audio full-time here at My New Microphone, and I do my best to keep that beginner's mindset and to always be learning from others, whether they are ahead of me at the same level or even below me in music production. I learn a ton of new things about mixing and music production every week, not only for my own skills and knowledge, but also to teach you guys as well. So do your best to be open-minded. And finally, non-technical tip number 11 for better mixes is to have patience. This is true of the short term and the long term. In the short term, we will all have those projects that are just a drag to mix. They're so complicated or disorganized, or the tracks weren't recorded properly, and it's very hard to get in and make a mix that we are proud of. But having patience and being able to sculpt out a mix that we can be proud of is a super important aspect to have when mixing. On the long term, it's critical to persevere and have patience as we learn not only the fundamentals, but the more advanced mixing concepts so that we can mix professionally and ultimately reach our goals in music production. So those are my top 11 non-technical tips for improving your mixes. I use all of these tips myself and it seems to be helping me, so I really wanted to share those with you today. Once again, these tips are buying your plugins and not pirating them, developing a client-facing portfolio where you can showcase your work, competing in mix competitions and working with professional multi-tracks in the process, writing, recording, producing, and then mixing multiple songs to get a great sense of the entire music production process, developing a consistent workflow that you can return to time and time again in your mixes, finishing mixes regularly, even if you are not 100% satisfied with them, rather than tweaking a mix continuously for weeks and months at a time, listening to your favorite songs on your typical playback systems to really get familiar with those systems so that you can better reference your mixes against them, taking detailed notes throughout the mixing process to have a to-do list of ideas to do once we get into the mix, taking regular breaks to refresh our ears and be more objective in the mix, being open-minded and maintaining a beginner's mindset, and having patience. If you think I missed anything here or you have anything to add to these non-technical mixing tips, I would highly encourage you to leave a comment down below. I'd love to hear what you think and to open up a discussion on this matter. If you'd like to hang out more with me here on the My New Microphone YouTube channel, I would invite you to hit that subscribe button and to also check out one of these videos in the top left or right corner of your screen. Click on one of those and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.